What would you do if you came back to your peaceful lakeside cabin only to find strangers throwing a full-blown BBQ party on your dock? What if the person hosting that party wasn't just any neighbor, but the HOA president? And what if she had the nerve to call the cops on you for trespassing on your own property? Sounds insane, right? Now imagine this. She's been slowly taking over your land, fining you for fake violations and turning your quiet retreat into her own backyard kingdom. But what she doesn't know? You've been documenting everything. This is the story of how I caught the HOA queen red-handed and flipped the script in the most satisfying way possible. Stick around, because what started with a burger on a stolen dock ended in courtroom's consequences and a BBQ party she wasn't invited to. Let's rewind. You ever come home early from a peaceful getaway, only to find chaos waiting on your doorstep? I did. And when I say chaos, I mean a full-blown barbecue, party blasting music, strangers lounging on my lakefront dock, and at the center of it all, Karen, the president of the HOA. A woman so entitled she must think private property is just a suggestion. But the real kicker? She called the cops on me for trespassing on my own land. Yeah, let that sink in. I stood there, keys still in hand, suitcase half out of my trunk, watching the deputy try to keep a straight face as Karen waved her arms around like she was on some suburban runway. It would have been funny if I wasn't about to be arrested for stepping onto my own damn porch. The thing is, this wasn't the first time Karen had crossed a line, but it was the first time I had proof and a plan. Let's rewind, because what led up to this moment was way worse than a stolen Saturday and a party on my lake. It was a long, ridiculous battle of fines, petty threats, and one woman's obsession with control. But what she didn't know? I document everything, and I was done playing nice. This is the story of how I turned the tables on the HOA, Queen Bee, and reclaimed not just my land but my peace. Let me set the stage. I own a cabin in a quiet gated lake community tucked into the Blue Ridge Mountains. Bought it 5 years ago as a weekend escape from the city grind. It's serene, surrounded by pine and maple, with a dock that stretches into a private cove on the lake. Think still mornings, canoe paddles, and coffee with loons calling in the distance. I rarely go more than once or twice a month, but when I do, it's for peace. Then there's the HOA. Now, I'm not against HOAs in theory. Structure helps, but our HOA was a different beast, controlled entirely by Karen Whitmore, a woman whose entire personality revolves around clipboards, bylaws, and community standards. She lives across the lake from me, in the largest property in the neighborhood, and she treats the entire area like it's her own personal fiefdom. I mean, she actually has a golf cart with HOA president printed on the front. The first run-in was small. A letter. Dear Mr. Thompson, your trash bin was left out past collection day. This is a violation of Section 4.2.3 of our community guidelines. That was her opening move. Then came a fine, then two, for things like uncut weeds along the dock edge and improper bird feeder placement. I paid the first, contested the second, and ignored the third. That's when the passive-aggressive notes started appearing taped to my door. Please consider how your neglect impacts the beauty and value of our community. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I installed security cameras. What those cameras caught was enlightening. One morning, Karen walked right onto my dock and rearranged my patio furniture. Another time, she clipped a perfectly healthy sapling, muttering to herself about invasive species. I confronted her once politely. Karen, this is private property. She looked me dead in the eye and said, this is shared property under the lake easement clause. You really should read the HOA handbook. Thing is, and she was wrong. Dead wrong. But I let it go. At least I tried. Because then came Memorial Day weekend. I had let my assistant know I wouldn't be using the cabin that weekend. At least that was the plan. A sudden project delay meant I got a surprise Friday off. So I packed up, hit the road, and arrived early Friday evening. And that's when I saw it. A massive BBQ setup. Balloons, lawn chairs, a string of tiki torches around my dock. Karen, standing in an apron, flipping burgers like she was queen of the lake. And when I stepped out of the car, she froze. Then she grabbed her phone and dialed 911. That was just the beginning. The cops arrived. To their credit, the deputy was polite. He approached me, took one look at my driver's license with the matching cabin address, then gave Karen a look like, "Ma'am, really?" She tried to argue that I had abandoned the property for over 90 days, and under HOA protocol, it was subject to communal use for sanctioned events. What kind of nonsense legal twilight zone was she living in? But it didn't stop there. After the party, she doubled down. I received a formal notice from the HOA claiming I had disrupted an authorized community gathering and would be fined $750 for public disturbance and aggressive behavior. Aggressive? For standing on my own lawn? I appealed, of course. I showed the security footage. Karen had no legal grounds. The board declined to comment. But then, the next weekend someone put a boot on my car. On my private driveway, a sticker slapped on the windshield claimed unauthorized vehicle. I called a tow service. Turns out the boot was from a third-party contractor Karen had hired. Not even HOA approved. I sent a cease and desist letter. She ignored it. Then came the sabotage. The motion lights on my dock? Smashed. My canoe? Untied and set adrift. I checked my cameras again. Caught a man I later learned was Karen's nephew creeping around with bolt cutters. I took the footage to the sheriff. They opened a report, warned her, but didn't press charges. That's when I realized the system was slow, too slow. So I started building my case. Emails, photos, receipts. I even got drone footage of her hosting community yoga on my lawn while I was gone. And finally, I filed a complaint with the county. Turns out, Karen had been bending rules for years. Unpermitted structures, misuse of HOA funds, false fines. It was time for a reckoning. I called in favors. My cousin's a lawyer. My neighbor, who had also been victim to Karen's antics, was a web developer. We built a website, HOA Watchdog Lake Whitmore Edition. On it, we uploaded everything. Videos, documents, even testimonies from 5 other homeowners who had been harassed. Within days, it went viral in our local Facebook group. People were furious. Turns out, Karen had been issuing unauthorized fines and pocketing a portion for administrative costs. We petitioned for a vote to remove her. Got 68% of the community to sign. Then I posted signs around the neighborhood. Community meeting. Saturday. Accountability matters. Karen tried to block it. Sent cease and desist letters. Threatened lawsuits. But when the county investigator showed up, she suddenly went silent. The meeting happened, and it was glorious. Neighbors brought printouts. One guy brought popcorn. I presented my findings like a Netflix docuseries. Karen sat stone-faced, arms crossed. By the end, a unanimous vote. Karen was removed from her HOA seat. But it wasn't over yet. A month later, she faced formal charges: fraud, trespassing, vandalism. I showed up to the court hearing with a manila folder full of evidence and a copy of the HOA handbook she so loved quoting. When the judge saw the footage of her nephew cutting my dock lights, he shook his head and said, "Ms. Whitmore, this isn't a community. It's a monarchy. And your reign is over." She was fined $15,000, ordered to pay restitution, and banned from serving on any HOA board for 10 years. As for the BBQ, I threw one of my own. Same dock, same grill, but this time invited guests only. Neighbors who had stayed quiet before now joined in. One even toasted, "To our lake, finally ours again." And as I flipped a burger in the same spot Karen once stood, I couldn't help but smile. Poetic justice has a smoky flavor. That summer, the lake felt different. Not just mine again, but ours. Peaceful, friendly, no more threats taped to doors. No more fines for unauthorized flowers. Karen moved out a few months later, quietly. Some say she went to start fresh. Others say she moved in with her sister 2 towns over. All I know is the HOA is now run by a rotating volunteer council. Transparent, chill, focused on keeping the neighborhood clean without becoming the FBI. The lesson? Bullies rely on silence. Entitlement thrives in shadows. But when you shine a light or a drone cam on it, the game changes. So if you're watching this and you've got a Karen in your life, document, stay calm, and don't be afraid to fight back smart. Comment below, what would you have done if you came home to a party on your dock? And hey, if you made it this far, comment justice served so I know you're part of the Lake Squad. Until next time, protect your peace. And maybe, install cameras.